Welcome to Reliability Matters, a podcast for the electronic assembly industry. Each episode covers topics related to reliability, best practices, and environmentally responsible assembly techniques, with insights from experts across the electronic assembly industry. Now, here's your host, Mike Conrad.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reliability Matters podcast. So it's been said on this show that one key factor to international competitiveness is automation. While labor rates vary widely across the world, automation helps to level the playing field. My guest today is Michael McHale, CEO of Production Systems Automation, otherwise known as PSA. Michael graduated from Drexel University with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. Just to put our upcoming conversation into context, it's helpful to know that PSA is a privately owned engineering and custom manufacturing firm founded in 1985 with 3 locations in Pennsylvania. They are experienced as a turnkey systems integrator, providing solutions for capital projects, including, but not limited to, flexible robotic solutions, custom automated machinery, drives and controls, and custom PLC projects. They also offer a line of standard products developed for specific industries, including our own industry. They are a robotic systems integrator at heart, representing leading global robotic OEMs. I say this not to endorse or promote a particular company, but rather to put my guests' comments into context. So without any further ado, I'm pleased to welcome Michael McHale to our show. Hey, Michael. Welcome to Reliability Matters.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm well.
Hi, Mike.
I'm very well. Thank you. Thanks for being here today. My eye is still like a Halloween costume, but what can we do, right? If I just smile the whole time, you don't really see it. So
no, it makes you look tough. I like it.
You know, you should see the other guy, right? Well, I appreciate you being here, Michael. I remember a time in the not too distant past when the term automation was kind of the devil in the details. People heard the factory's going to automate, and everyone was afraid they were going to lose their jobs. We were all at one point going to lose our jobs due to automation. It was the devil. And all these years later, we have indeed, many of us, lost our jobs, but not due to automation. We've lost our jobs due to the fact that other countries are paying people, pennies an hour, not literally, but to make the point. So we have seen a job exodus for certain specific types of jobs. But we're going to talk about how much automation has impacted the job market, because you have a very interesting anecdote I want to hear in just a little bit. But the point is, it didn't really happen. The automation of factories and processes, it has not really led to a net job reduction. It may have shifted the dominoes a little bit, but not a net loss. And before we kind of dive into our conversation, I just want to replay just a short clip from a prior guest, and that was Patrick Stimpert from Matrix Group, who Patrick is the manufacturing director for a contract manufacturer, and they're in Western Pennsylvania, and not the heart of cheap labor in Western Pennsylvania, and as you know, because you are in Pennsylvania, so but he had a very interesting take on competitiveness as it has to do with automation. So bear with me one second. Let's share that clip with you and our audience.
So really, the difference that everybody talks about labor, and quite honestly, in the contract manufacturer, if labor is your offset, then you have way too many manual processes that are associated with any one customer or any one build. And so it really becomes down to how you can support rapid change, and then with that rapid change, the less human activity, the better it is. That you can pivot quicker. You can pivot quicker and take on new assemblies and all the rest of that. So, if labor is the only discussion, and then you're doing something wrong as a contract manufacturer in the United States, because it should not be so much labor driven, because the automation is not that expensive. Especially if you've tried to hire people in the last couple of years. And if you think that automation is expensive, just keep changing the bottom 20% out in your organization. And I'll tell you how expensive that is, especially people that may not be as conscious about quality as you would like them to be.
Agree? Disagree?
No, absolutely. I think automation as we've progressed in technology has gotten more and more flexible. So in the contract manufacturing space, it's all about flexibility. Whether that's circuit boards, filling boxes, making widgets and gadgets, it's about flexibility. How can I change for a new customer? How do I put in a base process that I can use over and over and over again for different types of things? As technology's advanced, collaborative robotics, additional programming skills, we can now do that where we probably couldn't do that 30, 40 years ago. Things are getting smaller, faster, and honestly, even less expensive. So I do agree with Patrick. I don't think you should be defined just by your labor. You should be defined by the investment into R&D, into your business, as well as the automation.
Yeah, I totally agree. As this show concentrates on circuit assemblies, reliability of circuit assemblies, can you provide some examples of some of the automation systems that you've worked on for this space? I know SMT is, I think, a newer endeavor for PSA, but there's so much crossover between work you've done in segment A and segment B and C, et cetera. So what types of things have you worked on for the EMS space, basically?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot of work in the manufacturing or installation of boards after assembly, putting plugs together, a lot of the labor-intensive, slower processes. Obviously, you can go to to companies like Hanwha to be able to spit out lots of boards at a time, but it's some of the odd component-sized parts that we've had pretty good luck doing, as well as the assembly packaging after the fact. So we've done quite a bit of work in the cell phone space in different avenues, from handling some raw materials and to packaging. We're finding more and more of those opportunities.
Yeah, excellent. So how many of your products are built custom to address a very specific need versus any standard catalog? I know there is some catalog stuff. I have a feeling it's rather new, like bright and shiny new still. But no scratches on the doors yet. So that new. Tell me about kind of the ratio of custom projects and catalog type off the shelf projects, and where you're planning on going with that.
Yeah, when you look at the overall core of PSA, we are 95% custom projects. Whether that's large robot systems, smaller robot systems, even the custom equipment. We kind of we run the gamut. We do have some standard products that we sell into the plastic bottle industry, bed bug ovens, believe it or not, to the VA, and a couple other standard products. But that's a very small portion of our business. So almost everything we do is custom engineered, custom designed, and fabricated by PSA.
What type of ovens?
Believe it or not, bed bug ovens.
That's what I thought you said. I didn't want to repeat it because I thought I could have got it wrong.
Yes.
So
we sell quite a few.
Get rid of bed bugs from sheets and things like that? Is that what?
Yeah, sheets and bags, suitcases, things that attendees of the VA hospitals may bring in. We've also sold larger to the GSA to be able to put couches, file folders. Believe it or not, bed bugs are a problem in a lot of storage facilities.
Sure.
For paper. So we've done quite a bit of those as well.
I can only imagine the R&D that had to go behind the scenes at your facility to, did you have to then put all your furniture in the ovens too? When you were done.
Yeah, I don't think your listeners really want to.
Too much information, right?
To be honest with you, Mike. Yeah, there's certain things left to the imagination.
Yeah, maybe they're best staying there. When I think of automation. I see a thing we do in our factory. I own and operate a factory. We build equipment, and there are some jobs that are pretty tedious that we just have to do. And clearly, I have the option of hiring PSA or a similar type of company to come in and automate that process. But my first thought, it may not be valid, but my first thought is, no way. I'm not going to spend $1 million to save a $100 operation. I'm just not going to do it. And
it makes sense.
But I have a feeling, given the fact that your company's been around so long, your company's growing, and automation is this huge thing right now, everywhere. I have a feeling my first impression is probably obsolete or just incorrect in general. So, is there a typical ROI on a investment in automation, and what would that typical ROI be?
Yeah, we are typically under 2.5 years. We do projects that have 3-month ROIs. We do have projects that we do are 5-year ROIs, but a lot of those 5-year ROIs are very difficult jobs, difficult environments that may be driven more by insurance or OSHA claims or just injuries or a bad work environment than it is about ROIs. So a lot of companies do make very valuable decisions for their employees by automating things that are just brutal work environments, picking up 50-pound bags, 50-pound boxes, handling forge pressings out of a forge, things that are big, dirty, and difficult. But on a typical project, like something for your manufacturing floor, I'm going to tell you're probably between 1 year and 2.5 years. And we really won't price or even we'll work with you as to what that installation needs to be to hit an ROI. So we have those conversations with our customers all the time.
And is that a common misconception that do people come to you afraid to see the quote or?
Yeah, I think some customers are probably more afraid to tell you where they need to be than they are about what the savings will be. So the more open the customer is about, okay, I have X dollar, this employee costs me $20. I do 3 shifts a day. My ROI at that point's $180,000. Being able to develop a system that fits your return on investment is what I think one of our skill sets are. Yeah. But the customer has to be open and honest about what that ROI is. Just don't, we don't like customers that say, hey, we need to automate this, and we come up with this brilliant system. The problem is, you're right, it's $1 million and it saves 100. That's not the right application.
Right.
A lot of times we find customers will call us in to look at a particular application, and we start walking through your facility, and we find 20 other better applications for automation than the thing you called us about. Because we have an inherent, our sales team has an inherent ability to be able to find better opportunities for a return on investment by what you do in your factory. We do automation assessments for companies where we come in and actually put down 20, 30, 40, 100 items that we feel are best for automation with a budget, a rough order of magnitude, and an ROI that we like to collaborate with. So that's not unheard of in our industry.
And that's a good segue to my next question. When we receive a phone call from a potential customer, they have a list of questions for us. And quite frequently, in order for us to answer those questions, we have a list of questions for them, right? So we can make sure we're dancing with the right partner, right? We don't want to waste their time, our time, and we want to provide value. I'm sure the same goes for your company. So if I were to call you, if anyone were to contact you, you mentioned you do a automation assessment. What are the general types of questions you will ask a customer that will ensure that your response will be responsive and accurate and helpful to their request?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that question, Mike. The first side is we have customers that come to us with a scope of work. And that's a different scenario because that customer has already put time into writing up what their requirements are for that project. They've probably funded a project or had a budget. So we put that in one basket. And then the other basket is, hey, we think we have this thing we want to automate. We'll ask a couple questions about labor rates, how many shifts, kind of get a ballpark. But honestly, then it takes a visit. It takes a visit to see exactly what the application is, what we're looking at, and what that ROI will be. And within a half hour, an hour of that visit, we can usually tell what if that's a viable application for us to be able to help you with.
Very good. And what are the common misconceptions with factory automation? Demystify it or myth bust that. I'm sure people come with their own particular conceptions.
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception about automation is everyone thinks the robots are coming to take their jobs, and that's really not the case. And you look at the misconceptions about, okay, what can automation do for my factory versus the misconception of what is automation going to do to my job, looking at it as an individual. There's some reports, that automation will eliminate 75 million jobs over the next 20 years. But we're going to be adding $133 million jobs or 133 million other jobs doing other things that automation is producing. Programmers, maintenance, whatever it may be, to support those industries or to move those jobs into other value adds for those manufacturers. So with onshoring, we're going to see, I think, more jobs generated by automation. There's more things to fix. There's more things to evaluate. I think it's going to drive a higher paying wage long term.
You're the king of segues today. This is perfect. I was going to ask you this later, but this is a perfect time. You, in an interview that I watched when I was doing my research before talking to you, you were on another show, and you talked about a report from the U.S. Census Bureau about a classification of employee that finally no longer exists. Share that. I know it's not necessarily totally responsive to this, but I think it's a great anecdote, and it kind of makes a greater point. If you wouldn't mind sharing that with me.
Yeah, so in the 1950 census, there was one profession listed that is not in the census as of 2021, and that was elevator operator. And you could really look at that as that one particular job was eliminated due to automation. So in that 75-year history, that's one job in 75 years. So we're either not doing very good technology-wise or advancing the human race, or we're generating jobs in other spaces. And when you look at that elimination of an elevator operator, you now produced more elevator installers, technicians, service people to handle all that technology, on top of the engineering behind the control systems. So you took a probably not a very skilled or a very technical job and made tremendous amounts of additionally higher valued jobs out of that.
Yeah. And as you've said before, in other venues, robots don't make robots, right?
Correct.
So
Yep.
Your factory is not 100% filled with robots, except maybe what's going out to your customers. It's filled with people, smart people, imaginative people, creative people that are using their hands and their brains and other tools to create something, right? So at the end of the day, I can't imagine, the doomsday scenario of, automation is going to lead to all of us, serving robots rather than the other way around. I don't think that's going to happen. Clearly, we're not even headed that direction. Probably quite the opposite. I think there's enough data out there to suggest that. We hear a lot about not just IoT, but industrial Internet of Things, IIoT. Platforms like Industry 4.0, Hermes, whatever. Every industry has their own stamp that they put on it. How have these initiatives influenced factory automation? And more specifically, has the push for IIoT come down into PSA world?
I think it has a little bit. I think we're still years away from full connectivity. The whole idea of IIoT is about collecting and categorizing and sharing data. If you have old systems in your facility, you can't do that. So it's newer facilities from the ground up that can actually kind of fall into that category. I think we are decades away from fully connected plants. And with that conversation, you also get into the ability of security of those facilities. How much interlocking of equipment do you do? Cybersecurity, bulletproofing your manufacturing floor. In some ways, we have some customers that were decoupling equipment because there are issues with network security, network switch security that can bring down a portion of a facility inadvertently with a software patch. So we were in a facility, a very large paper mill, that did a software patch to a network switch and brought down an entire paper mill. And that's never a good thing. So that
No.
IoT is starting to become segregated.
Yeah, we build equipment for the electronic assembly industry, and it is networkable, and it has Wi-Fi enabled, et cetera, Ethernet ports, whatever they want. And when we ship to sensitive locations, we have to strip
Yes.
Windows, in this case, of all of its drivers. Doesn't mean someone
Yes.
can't put them back in, but we have to ship it sterile. And we physically have to put locks. There's a little Ethernet port and USB port locks that one can put in. It takes a little device to remove it. We have to physically block access to the USB ports. And
Yep.
and that's in a world of but everyone wants their machine connected so that it can talk to the next machine and put reports up in the air. It's like,
Yeah.
but you can't.
We also, part of this technology would be to be able to troubleshoot remotely. And I'm sure, you have this problem. If you have a piece of equipment out in the field and it needs to be serviced or where it's not working for some reason, we would like to dial into that piece of equipment and be able to fix it or troubleshoot remotely without having to send a service tech out. Well, that's not nearly none of our customers allow that because of network security.
Sure.
So we have very limited access. The one thing that we are adding virtual reality to our systems. So we have a PSA app, and then we put videos and troubleshooting manuals into video right on a tablet, so you can access it right at the machine to help with troubleshooting. And we use that on our SMT products for Matrix and Marksman, and it helps with installation, troubleshooting, and we're finding that to be very valuable because the days of having a manual, open up a manual, see how something works, those days are kind of gone. People want to watch a YouTube video, so we're converting all of our written manuals and documentation into visual aids for troubleshooting. That also helps us with language barriers, so we can then provide our manuals in Spanish and other languages. It really helps us a lot.
Well, it's funny. One of the most sophisticated computers, most powerful computers someone would ever own is, one of these, right?
Yep.
And they don't come with manuals. I have two grandkids, 10 and 7, and for years they can unlock my phone. They're little hacks, right? They can unlock my phone. They know where to swipe. They know where to go to YouTube to watch the latest version of Lego Ninjago or whatever it was, and Ninjago, and it's just intuitive. So you're right. I mean, it's no one's looking at paper manuals anymore. It's all electronic.
No.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We've found a lot of value in augmented reality, and this will drive into headsets for actually trying to lay out equipment in factories, walking through to understand access points in the factory. I think there's more of IoT in that space, in this planning space and virtualization space than there necessarily is in connectivity outside of the plant environment.
Yeah, I agree. So your company operates 3 different divisions, including robotics and automation, DoD, Department of Defense work, and SMT. SMT being kind of the newest extension to your company. I assume that while your DoD division makes hybrid projectiles and UAVs, there's a little crossover between a hybrid projectile and a piece of surface mount equipment. But there probably is a lot of other crossover from your other divisions. And so how much technology overlap is there between your 3 major operating divisions? and the other division? How much crossover between the three divisions, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
There's actually more to you would think. We do have 60 engineers and fabricators. So we have a full line of machine shop, all of our own fabrication ability. So we do hardware design, software design, robot programming, mechanical design, electrical design, whatever it may be for our systems. We are a fully in-house shop. So what that allows us to do is now we have all of that background information. So we have all the staff. If you need a board designed, we have a hardware designer. If you need something programmed, we have 4 programmers. Fabrication, we fabricate everything that we produce. So the only thing that we do outside is paint and coatings. So that's the value add that PSA brings to like our new division of SMT. We can be faster to market, higher quality, and more cost competitive because we control all our costs. So that really helps. So when you think about the crossover, SMT is there. It's a little outside of our norm, but it's really not, because our core business is manufacturing and engineering. What is products in the SMT space? Manufacturing and engineering, and that's what we provide.
Let's talk about products in the SMT space for a moment. You guys came up with a stencil printer, and
yes,
this is not a commercial show, as you know, and so we're not hyping a particular stencil printer. But I am fascinated with the concept of. So you guys are a custom automation shop. So you're clever people, very MacGyvery, right? Mm-hmm. And someone at your company goes, "Hey, let's jump into the crowded pool and build a stencil printer that 1,000 other." I say that with a little bit of hyperbole, but 1,000 other companies make. Half of those companies are in Asia that sell it for 6 cents, but something in your mindset said we could do it better. And I imagine you just didn't do an also-ran because there's no money in that, right? You would just be competing with all the other people trying to hawk their goods. So with the mindset of a custom machine manufacturer, designer, what made you get into a off-the-shelf product, or catalog type product, I should call it? And how did you go about looking at what was available and what was missing from that portfolio and address those missing items to come up with what I would assume you would consider a better mousetrap?
Yeah, this one's a funny story. So we never intended on coming out with a manual printer. We were in Minnesota at the SMT show last year, and we were sitting with a couple of our reps, or one of our reps, at lunch, and the rep's like, "We really need this in the marketplace, and it needs to do this." So myself and Charlie Monkavich, who's really heading up our SMT space, he's been in that world for over 20 years. We were like, you know what, we can do this. We can add vision. We can add higher accuracy into a system that's more cost effective because we are actually manufacturing it and bringing it to market. So that's how our manual printer came about. We didn't dream up the idea. Our rep groups that rep our tooling actually came to us with the opportunity to say, "Hey, Mike, we need this in the space," and that's what we're doing with in the SMT space. We're having our reps and customers come to us and say, "Hey, Mike, we would really like this in the space. Is this something you can do?" So we're bringing that custom automation, custom manufacturing, know-how into a space that might be lacking in that very custom world. So this was not dreamed up by us. This was actually brought to us as an opportunity, and that's how we see us going forward. We're going to keep introducing products, but those products are going to be kind of demanded by the customer base to say, "Hey, we're missing this. Maybe it's not. This is kind of perfect for what we do, but if you did this to it, it would be better." That's what we're trying to do.
Right. It's not that they're missing a product to sell on their line card.
Correct.
They could find that somewhere, right? But
yes,
they're missing the product. The products that are available are missing something that had they could sell more.
Yeah. So this is what we're trying to do is offer a better mousetrap. It's something that's got a higher end vision, that's got higher end accuracy to help the manufacturers produce more products at a better price. That's the goal. So if we're not value adding, we're not going to be interested in making that product.
Yeah. as a manufacturer, we don't. Our companies are completely opposite in terms of we know our wheelhouse, we know what's not in our wheelhouse, and it took a greater part of 30 years to figure that out. You guys have been in business longer than we have. We started in '92. I think you started in '85. Is that?
Yeah, the core businesses all started in '85.
Yeah. So we've all been around the block a few times, and it took a lot of years to realize this. If someone came to us and said, "Look, we want one of your machines, but we need it 3 inches wider," that'd be like going to Ford and say, "Look, I really like your Ford Escort, but I want it 3 inches wider. Can you make me one?" And they go, "Sure, $20 million, new tooling, whatever." It's hard for us to do custom work, even though we did it many times. I don't think we ever made money on it. And you live in that world. You obviously turn a profit. You're successful in a custom world. I really like the catalog type world, meaning we build one product over and over and over and over again, and it changes over the years. But we build one product over and over and over again, get really good at it. Was part of the decision, other than just to be responsive to a suggestion, was part of the decision to go into a standard product, repeatable standard product, to experience that side of the business, to be able to really drive the cost down, profit up, by being able to repetitively build something over and over and over again. And you put the engineering in once, and then it's just all manufacturing at that point. Was that part of the decision to have part of the business as a standard product business?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a enormous amount of manufacturing ability with all the equipment that we own. So, and when you own equipment, the idea is to keep your equipment running.
Right.
The more time your mills run, the more time your water jets run, the more time you're welding, the better off the efficiency is in the company. So, when we own all those assets, uptime of those assets is where the value's at. So yeah, just like our other standard products for hot fill machines or bed bug ovens, this is kind of that same philosophy. We can make products, once we get past the initial engineering and the initial prototyping, making a product for us is easy. So if you call up and say, "Hey, Mike, the Marksman's great, but I have this one application. It needs to be 4 inches wider." Well, that's a couple hours with the SolidWorks model, and then we go out and make it.
You make money on that. I lose money on that. So you do that stuff.
Yeah. So I think the value is, if you're manufacturing every component you make, there's value in it. If you're having to subcontract out components, wiring, panel builds, you're gonna struggle with that, because the profit is being made by all your subcontractors.
That's right.
We're our own subcontractor.
Right. Too many hands in the pot there.
Correct. Yeah. So, and that's why we're able to go to market faster. If somebody calls us up and says, "Hey, Mike, we got a little problem. This particular thing's not quite right," well, we just change it on the new ones and make a new part and send it to you.
Yeah.
And you can have that done in an hour. That also helps us on the R&D side. So when Charlie dreams up something and wants to try something, we have 10 3D printers and 28 mills. There's always a mill open. There's always a programmer open. You go over there and you spit out a part in an hour, and you can try that new part. That helps us quite a bit.
At this very moment, I can just hear the envy coming out from our audience to be able to have that kind of technology at your disposal. In a prior interview, you talked about augmented reality, AR, which we just talked about, goggles, walking through the plant, training on machines. So I can see that. You also talk about AI, artificial intelligence, being part of the automation process. Can you provide some examples of AI technologies embedded into your automation systems?
Yeah, I think the use of AI is maybe a little overdone. When we talk about AI, it's more about kind of a deep learning for, say, vision systems. We're working with a very advanced vision system for a client of ours. And with that, we're learning that new technology, and it's learning. But yet, we call it AI, but it's not really AI. This goes back to the robots taking our jobs. There's a programmer that needs to program for hundreds of hours of that system and continually teaching it over and over and over and over again. So this is producing, that goes back to the same concept. We didn't eliminate a job. We might have eliminated a job on the manufacturing floor, but we created a job in the engineering office.
Right.
So AI, I think, is a very big word that you're not seeing a lot of AI in the world in a lot of practical applications at this point.
I always laugh. I'm glad you said that, because I always crack up at when I see commercials for consumer products and they talk about AI built in. It's like Crest toothpaste with AI. Like, obviously that's not a real example, but it might as well be, because I don't even think they know what AI means, right? And everything is AI now. It's like in the 70s, everything was turbo, and ultra, and now it's all AI. And there is obviously real AI out there, but it is a kind of a placeholder for something high tech, something that makes decisions. But not all of them are AI. But in your world, I can definitely see true AI as part of the software decision making systems, learning, things like that. So I was born in 1960, which meant I came of driving age in 1975, 1976. And my first car was a 67 Mustang that I bought for $900 off a used car lot. It was a 9-year-old car. It wasn't a classic by any means. And I took 4 years of auto shop in high school, so I was a bit of a motorhead. And I remember very well cars of that era, of the 70s and 80s in particular. And they were cool cars. I mean, muscle cars. They look great, but much better than, at the time, the Asian imports, Japanese imports. But they were terrible cars in terms of build quality, reliability, fit and finish. Awful. We made terrible cars back then. And back then, much of the processes were not as automated as they are today. They had certain robot welding things, back many years ago, but it was still, humans were largely still building cars and on the assembly lines. Today, the whole process is highly, highly automated. There are still people there, but the major processes are highly automated. The seam lines between trunks and quarter panels, for example, are super tight now, and even. A typical American-built car will easily go 130, 140,000 miles with, relatively speaking, very little trouble, relatively speaking. And I'm thinking this has as much to do, maybe more to do, with the increase in automation than just a commitment to quality. I have a feeling the increase in automation produced the quality, which we then say we have a commitment to. Do you see the decision to automate a factory go beyond the obvious labor savings, and really part of the ROI is an increase in reliability, a decrease in returns and trouble and things like that? Does that question make sense? How much of it is driven by a desire for increased quality and consistency versus just labor savings?
I think it's a very large part of the equation. If you're a long-term investor in your business, the automation helps you change your product over time. Can I make my product, you go back to the car reference. If you have humans that have to put together fenders, you need to leave a lot of space, and there's a lot of opportunity to make changes and to slide those fenders around. But if you engineer the car for automation, you can make all those things, tighter and more accurate, increasing, quality. I think that stands true for any automation. As that automation is in place, your product's going to get better, more repeatable, and you're going to have, like you said, less returns. The value of that ROI portion of your decision has to be made. If you're a long-term investor in your business, just not the ROI of the people, it's also the ROI of the returns, customer satisfaction, and then how can I change that product to be better, cheaper, faster in the automation process? And thinking part of that as you were designing the system helps a lot as well.
Yeah. I would imagine there are a number of justifications to invest in automation, as we talked about labor quality, maybe a safer work environment. Maybe there's something that tends to chop hands off. So
Yep,
now it doesn't
of
chop
course.
hands off. It's always good to have your team handy. How has the unprecedented labor shortage that we're seeing right now landed on your business? Have you seen people say, we never really thought we'd invest in automation, but we can't hire people. It's so difficult to hire people. Are people using automation as a mitigation strategy for not being able to otherwise hire people to do that job?
Oh, of course. I mean, like I think that's
That's a duh
that's
thing, right?
that's pretty much understood in the sense that even if you can find people to do the 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 work that you need, the cost of that person has gone up significantly, which is now allowing us to have a higher return on investment. So, there's a lot of industries that we're working in that had no ROI for automation just because labor costs were 12, 13, $14 an hour. That doesn't exist anymore. So as labor rates start pushing 20, 21, 22, 25, automation makes, very much sense for many industries. So I think you're going to see that continue. We don't see inflation going down in the near future, and I don't think wages are not going to go backwards. That never happens.
Right.
So automation is going to take over more and more. Also, we do have an enormous shortage of workers in the workforce. The only way of making that up is by upvaluing the workers that you do have by supplementing them with automation and moving them to jobs that are open.
Yeah, I think also, and we have to kind of wrap up because we're very quickly running out of time, but let's kind of wrap it up with this statement. You can validate whether the statement is correct or not. One of the advantages, of course, of automation is we can replace certain amounts of labor. Now, we all agree the labor generally goes somewhere else in the factory because someone has to run the
Correct.
robots, right?
Yes.
But the tedious labor, which means a person who's hired to put yellow tips on the ends of metal prongs,
Yeah.
probably not a lot of internal job satisfaction, probably more turnover in that industry, in that segment of the industry, than there would be otherwise. So I can see one of the benefits is it can actually have this counterintuitive benefit to employee retention because they're not doing things that are just no fun to do, frankly. But the other kind of soft benefit that I can see, it's tangible, but I think people think of it as a soft benefit, is robots don't file sexual harassment cases or workers' comp cases. Robots don't have to quarantine themselves when they've been exposed to COVID. Robots don't, they're not human. And they every day is a good day. They're always in a neutral mood to do the work. When I talked about me being kind of a motorhead, it's often long said, never buy an American car that was built on a Friday. Or if
Yes.
a car broke down, it's like, this is a Friday car. Never buy a Friday car. And worse, never buy a Friday car when it's a 3-day weekend, because that's the worst. But that's just obviously a statement of how people have bad days. I know robots can break, but generally speaking, they don't have bad days and good days. They don't have mood swings, what people do. How much of that benefit that's received after someone automates something was actually realized beforehand and part of the decision, and how much of it was like, Michael, holy whatever, I can't believe we have this extra benefit. I didn't even factor that in. It's kind of a jumbled statement / question, but is that just an afterthought advantage, or do people actually calculate that in?
No, I think human capital needs to be part of your business balance sheet thought process. If you have really miserable jobs and your staff comes in as miserable, that's not producing a great life for them or their family, and it kind of makes you at the factory miserable. But if you can replace a terrible job and be able to move associates to a better job that maybe gives them some mobility upwards, that's always better for the morale of the employees and the business overall. Satisfaction of a business is very important, and not satisfaction of the business, but satisfaction of the people inside the business are going to be more productive, less injuries, higher attendance rates. So remove those kind of miserable jobs from your workforce, and then move those individuals to a better job that's better for their mental state. And I think the value of that over time is going to drastically increase. And you're starting to see that with the SEC actually going to make public companies file a lot of HR related information in their quarterly filings. And it's going to push that. And satisfaction, rollover, opportunities for growth are going to be measured. And the time is changing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are a lot of soft benefits to automation beyond the well-documented, things,
Yes.
Cost reductions in certain types of labor for that project.
Yes.
Increases in quality, consistency, reliability, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then all that soft stuff, like, they don't file complaints. They don't join unions. They don't do things like that.
Yeah.
Not that that's bad, but it's just, you don't have to worry about that stuff when it's automated.
Yeah, I don't even think it's even goes that far, Mike. I think it's do you want to work in a freezer that's at 0 degrees or minus 10 degrees,
right?
Palletizing boxes all day long in a horrible environment where you work for 15 minutes and you have to come out for 15 minutes because it's 15 minutes is all you can handle, just breathing. And no one wants to do those jobs. There's no reason why we shouldn't replace those jobs with automation and let those associates have a more, have a better lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a human capital value of that.
Yeah, and this comes as a surprise to people who aren't in business, who don't own and operate their own business. And this will not come as a surprise to you. And that most people leave their jobs not because of money. People leave because of money, but the majority of the time people leave their jobs, it's because they're not happy at work. And
dissatisfaction, yes.
Dissatisfaction. And
yes.
If and it's almost never money. In fact, I can't tell you how many times people have left because of money, and then they've come back, 3 months later, and they really want their job back because they were happier. It's a quality of work life issue. So, if someone is quote unquote displaced by a robot, to coin in like a '70s Jetsons term or something, displaced by a robot, chances are they will land in a different part of the factory doing something that it's not in a freezer, won't get their hands chopped off.
Yes.
They're not throwing bed bugs into ovens, things like that, right? Which obviously improve your quality of life. My last question, based on all of your significant experience in automation, where do you see the future of factory automation going? Get out your crystal ball.
I think it's going to go deeper. I think companies are, as we're re-onshoring manufacturing, automation is going to grow at a substantial rate. We are behind a lot of other countries, Japan, China, with robots per employee. So the growth is going to be there. You're seeing double-digit growth in the automation space year over year. You're also going to see the growth of automation from the Fortune 500s down to the billion-dollar companies, to the $100 million companies, down to the $20 million companies, as automation becomes more accessible, affordable, maybe easier to program, and labor issues become harder and harder. I think your automation everywhere, from the grocery store to the gas station to your work-life balance, is going to just keep increasing.
I'll tell you where it doesn't make sense. I was on a cruise earlier this year, April, and the cruise ship had a robot bartender, right?
Yes.
And it was a bit of a, it's a bit of a shtick, right? It'll make a drink. It'll make a drink for you. Yeah. But it can't tell you, not that I would ask this question, that's not where I am in life, but they can't tell you the name of the cute girl at the end of the bar, right? It doesn't understand, go buy that person a drink. It doesn't listen to your problems. It doesn't act like, it doesn't tell a joke. It doesn't laugh at your joke. Yeah. It doesn't cut you off, which is probably one advantage. But clearly, I don't think robot bartenders are a great idea. I want a human bartender. But out of that,
I think you need.
Aside for that,
it's human. It's human interaction. I don't, robots and automation is not going to ever stop human interaction. I think the last
Right.
couple of years of COVID and the lockdowns have taught us that human interaction is important. And, in a lot of ways, business is getting back to the way it was before, more in-person meetings, the way it should be. You can resolve a lot more problems in person than you can by a Teams call.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. Well, McHale, thank you so much for being my guest today. CEO, PSA, Production Systems Automation. I appreciate you being here. Continued success, and I'm looking forward to seeing more products for the SMT world, my world, come out of that little dream house factory you have. One last question. I'm famous for asking multiple last questions. You have 3 manufacturing facilities within Pennsylvania. What's the reason for 3 versus, this has nothing to do with technology now, but what's the reason for 3 versus, one big factory? It's just the way
Frankly,
you grew?
people. No, it's people. We've done a couple of acquisitions, but really it comes down to the people. Like we talked earlier, robots don't build robots, people do. So amassing the talent levels that we have is all about the people and access to colleges and universities and, where people want to live. So that one always comes back to it's all about people.
Oh, excellent. Good answer. For my viewers and listeners, if you'd like to get more information on PSA and reach out to McHale, I'll put some contact information in the show notes. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, simply go to the app and look at the show notes, and we'll have some contact information there. If you're watching this on YouTube, look down. It says show more, and click that button, and you'll be able to access that information. McHale, once again, thanks for being my guest. And for our audience, I'll see you again in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, McHale. Well, that's another episode. Thanks for listening to or watching the Reliability Matters podcast. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe to Reliability Matters on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on our newest channel, Amazon Music, or virtually wherever you get your podcasts. And a special thanks to Circuit Assembly Magazine's PCB Chat at pcbchat.com and Ascendo Reliability at reliability.fm for syndicating this show. Thanks for your questions and episode suggestions. Please keep them coming. Send comments and episode suggestions to Mike at mikeconrad.com. Just remember, that's Conrad with a K. And be sure and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, or if you're watching this on YouTube, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified when new episodes are released. We release new episodes on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month. Once again, thanks for listening or watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, and perhaps most importantly, keep doing it right. And I'll see you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to the Reliability Matters podcast. Join us on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month for new episodes of Reliability Matters.